I feel tricked at every turn.
This will affect everybody. This will make chains collapse. If it's not doing already, it will.
There is not a single choice I could have made that can stop this car crash coming at me.
Well, I think I've gone through stages where I've just cried constantly.
The government should get this material off these buildings now and worry about who pays later.
To look at the Grenfell Tower today, you wouldn't know of the horror that took place here. But 4 years ago, this was the aftermath of the worst fire in decades, and one which exposed systemic failures in building safety. It's hard to believe that flammable cladding, including the kind that caused this inferno, is still fixed to homes across Britain. I first met Karim Masili a day after the fire. He was frantically searching for his uncle, Hesham Rahman, who he later discovered had died on the top floor of the tower. 4.5 years later, he's in despair at how little has been done to make homes safe.
Grenfell uncovered this national building crisis. Grenfell was no freak accident. I've said this before, and another Grenfell it's just a matter of time. We can't have justice until this element of Grenfell is sorted.
It's been more than 4 years since the Grenfell Tower fire shocked the nation, and the government vowed never again. But there are still high-rise buildings up and down the country covered in dangerous cladding, and it's unclear exactly how many buildings there are, which begs the question, if you don't know how big the problem is, how do you begin to try and solve it? A month after Grenfell, Sophie Bishner got the keys to her first property, a flat in a high-rise tower in the heart of Stevenage. But her dream home soon turned into a nightmare.
We have potentially flammable insulation, missing fire breaks, non-ACM cladding that needs to be replaced.
And the cost to fix this is £15 million. In law, landlords can pass this cost on through general maintenance. So split between each leaseholder means Sophie's bill is £208,000.
For me, thinking about moving on, like starting a family, getting married, even changing jobs, you think like you've got this huge cost on top of you. And I found it really hard, like relying on my family to help and my partner, because if I go bankrupt, what happens to them? What's the implications to my family and to my partner? And yeah, it's completely put my life on hold, really. I also had to see my GP and been diagnosed with anxiety and depression this year, so it's been a real struggle.
One shared by hundreds of thousands of leaseholders up and down the country, desperate and trapped in flats they can't sell, with spiralling costs they can't control. The government has allocated £5.1 billion to remove dangerous cladding on buildings above 18 metres, but the true cost of repair is estimated to be closer to £15 billion, and this doesn't extend to buildings under 18 metres or take into account any other costs apart from cladding, like missing fire breaks or flammable insulation.
Hi Ash.
Hi.
Charlotte, nice to meet you.
I went to Essex to meet Ash Wines and his young family. The building they live in is below the 18-metre cut-off, but needs lots of work to make it safe enough to sell.
These are the timber balconies. We don't actually own one of these, but as you can see, all of the flats this side on the car park have them, and they go all the way up to the 5th floor.
There's also flammable cladding and problems with the insulation. The government has done a U-turn on previous advice and now said that buildings of this height don't need to get cladding and other safety defects fixed. But in reality, these words aren't enough to reassure lenders.
Right, which one's which? I always get this wrong, don't I? Is that you?
2 years ago, Ash and his partner Zoe had found their forever home. But because of the failures with the building, they couldn't sell this one-bed flat. So the family of 5 are stuck here for who knows how long. And worse still, Zoe bought the flat as part of a shared ownership scheme, meaning she has a 30% stake, but is liable for the full cost of remediation.
They're trying to put the genie back in the bottle after they release it. It's just not possible to do. They've highlighted just how unsafe all these buildings are. You know, the buildings are failing these inspections left, right and centre, and the government have probably realised actually this is a bigger problem than we've initially thought it was, and actually don't need the form. And it's a bit too late. A lot of lenders actually know now that insurance companies, up in insurance premium, they know these buildings are unsafe, and they're not just going to pretend that they're fine.
This young couple don't know yet how much they'll have to pay, but they're nervous.
We're having to research what will happen to us if we go back, if we go bankrupt. That we're having to consider that as a possibility. That's where we're at, and it's, yeah. Sorry.
Bankruptcy is an immediate reality facing thousands of leaseholders who say help from the government is lacking. Since the Grenfell fire in 2017, there's been a quick succession of housing secretaries, 4 in fact. The latest in line, Michael Gove, has said he will try his best.
The easy people to sting are the leaseholders, I think is wrong. Now, it may well be that I have to come back to this committee or back to the House of Commons and say, look, I've tried my very, very best and I've failed, but I just don't think as a starting point that we should be asking people who, exactly as you say, Mary, through no fault of their own have been landed with these bills to pay the bills on the scale that's been envisaged.
But as yet, there's been no alternative plan put forward by the government, and already a caveat that it might fail. Building safety expert Matt Hodges-Long believes the government has failed to grasp how serious the situation is.
This could undermine the whole housing market. This is typically, most of the residents within flats are living in cities or large towns. Quite often they're first-time buyers, or they might be at the other end of the age range where they've moved down for retirement to release some equity. So ultimately, the whole market is now stuck because these flats can't sell, and effectively a stagnation of the property market. So this will affect everybody. This will make chains collapse. If it's not doing already, it will. And so I think everybody will be impacted in some way by this crisis.
This is obviously your building, 17.7 metres.
In Leeds, 44-year-old Rachel Loftus is getting desperate.
One building gets treated one way, another building gets treated a different way.
She was awarded an MBE for her work protecting others during the pandemic, but her future looks bleak. The building next to hers is getting its flammable cladding removed, but she doesn't know when work might begin to make her building safe. It also has cladding which needs to come off, but at 17.7 metres high, it's unclear if it will qualify for funding. It has other safety problems too, which has meant she's had to fork out £12,000 for a fire patrol and seen her insurance premiums jump from £300 to £1,800. All this before she tackles her main bill, estimated to be £112,000.
I don't even own this building. I own the apartment that sits inside this building, and the idea that I could, my whole financial future could be ruined because of that just seems... It's still astounding and astonishing. I still can't really believe that it could happen, but it's happening. I'm seeing this happen with neighbours and people, living just across the dock. If I had to choose bankruptcy, I just think, I've worked my whole life. I work hard. I'm really proud of the work I do, and the idea that would have to stop for something that's, not in my control that breaks me a bit, actually. Sorry.
We asked the Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, who works inside this building, to talk to us about the issues raised in our report, but he refused. This at a time when thousands of leaseholders are at breaking point, and there are growing calls for the government to make building regulations stronger and more prescriptive.
In 2009, the government had the chance to do this. A fire ripped through Lakanal House in London and killed 6 people. It highlighted failures in building safety, but recommendations were not put in place. This inaction will now come under scrutiny during Module 6 of the official inquiry into the Grenfell fire. Cladding expert Jonathan Evans has been demanding change for years.
In Module 6, I think it will become very, very obvious that actually the regulations, the guidance, the knowledge of the LFB about the safety of cladding systems after Lacanau and Shepherd's Bush. They knew for at least 5 years that there was a serious problem in the country of external wall fires. So hopefully the people in the Treasury will sit there and think, actually, this is on us. We need to step in. We can't expect the nation and the residents and the innocent people that are sitting facing crippling bills now to actually pay for the mistakes which frankly originated within government.
A sentiment which is gaining ground.
Ultimately, all of this leads to government. They own the regulatory systems. They've failed. We've seen that with Grenfell. We saw that with Lacanau House before it. And we've seen it since. So the government need to step up and take ownership of this crisis. They need a firm hand on the tiller. And they need to manage this as a real crisis.
And until they do, everyone impacted by it is stuck, including Grenfell's bereaved families who can't rest until all homes are safe.
Sorry, I don't usually get emotional. I'm just fed up now. I'm just fed up. I feel trapped. We feel trapped because we just can't move on with our lives. I just want it to be over,
And for it to be over, Karim needs to see criminal charges and changes to building regulations, so the lasting legacy of the 72 lives taken at Grenfell is a positive one. Charlotte Lomas, Sky News.